Welcome to the Blue Dwarf Keeping Children Safe Online. I am Paula, your host. I am a dedicated cybersecurity professional with a passion for ethical hacking, OSINT, and digital forensics. This podcast is a safe, supportive space where we share real-world tips to help parents, carers, and teachers protect their children in today's digital world. No fear, just practical advice and empowering insights to help you feel more confident navigating online safety.
Hello everyone. Today's episode discusses sensitive topics, including grooming tactics used to target children. This conversation includes reference to sexual behavior and may be distressing for some listener. Please be advised, this content is intended for educational and awareness purposes only. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Harrison, thank you for being here today and for your courage in sharing your story. Unfortunately, I'm sure there are many children out there facing similar experiences, but who haven't yet found the strength to speak up. Your voice matters, and we are honored to share it. To begin with, can you take us back to how your experience with digital spaces started? What were those early interactions like for you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paula. My experience with technology has permeated my whole life. I'm 21, almost 22 years old, and my generation's been called digital natives. We've been online pretty much for as long as we've been alive. My relationship to technology really started when I was like 8 or 9. We had iPads and iPods at home and a home computer, but my story doesn't really begin until I was moving into middle school, 11, 12, 13 years old. I was a depressed and isolated preteen, and I was really struggling to make friends in that transition from elementary to middle school. And I was super frustrated. I wasn't making friends like I wanted. I wasn't engaging socially like I wanted to. And I just kind of felt like I was an outsider. So I sought refuge in the only place that I knew how, in online gaming.
Wow. As the journey evolved, what kept pulling you back into those online spaces? Was it only because you were an outsider?
I think a lot of it was that feeling of being an outsider. Growing up in the US, I think gaming was a very normalized, culturally normalized outlet for young men to let out their anger, to spend their time, to get social. And honestly, with the anonymity of being behind an avatar or a username, you could say whatever you wanted, for better or for worse. So I think being able to speak in that space honestly about who I was and what I was feeling was a breath of fresh air because it couldn't be tied back to me. It was almost therapeutic in a way.
At any point, did you feel that something wasn't right, or even if you couldn't explain it?
Yeah, I think the gaming space is not something that I'm in anymore. Very much a marker of my childhood, but I do feel like that cultural space fostered a lot of negative behavior. I think in a lot of ways there were things that felt off all the time, but just enough felt right to keep you there, if that makes sense. Lying was pretty common. People exaggerated their life stories. Um, it just it was kind of the cultural communication of that space, if that makes sense.
It does. Did it ever feel like addiction or something hard to walk away from?
Yeah, there was one particular time, and this is something I've never shared before, but there was one particular time where I had played games for so long in one day that I actually ended up standing up, and I had sat down for so long. I was so lightheaded, and I guess I hadn't eaten or drinking anything in so long that I actually ended up passing out. And
Wow.
there's a scar on my face from where I actually hit my head on the door.
We
Um,
cannot see
there
it.
was yeah, yeah, right. And there was there was a pretty big pull to that online gaming community. What I sought as refuge for home became like a home base because it was comfortable, it was familiar, and it was anonymous.
Okay. Do you believe in duality in behavior that sometimes some people present different version of themselves? I know you touched up on this a bit earlier, but can you develop that?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really true, especially in a space where you are anonymous. I think we do this in the workplace all the time, where we code switch, right? We speak in our professional language. We say colleague instead of friend, things like that. I think that exists in the gaming community as well. I think that exists in all anonymous online spaces. I think people present the most attractive, the most fun, the most sometimes what's the word? Like encapsulating version of themselves, whether that's aggressive and a bully, if people, kind of attach themselves to that, or if they're kinder or their life is just more interesting. So I think people want to be valued um, across the spectrum.
Did you ever notice any difference in how you were treated or how you acted when you were online compared to in person?
I've never been asked that question before, but I do believe that there is a sense that people can be more rude online because there's generally no consequences for that behavior. It was pretty common for, older kids to be playing the game and just say terrible things to you. I mean, hearing cuss words and racial slurs and like, I mean, all of that stuff was very, very, very common. Um, but even beyond that, there were some people that kind of made it their mission to be kind. That was also more rare, but still definitely real. Sometimes older kids would want to play with you and want to have you in their team just because they felt like it was the right thing to do.
Okay. Do you think that would happen in person? The rude kids would have ever come to you in person saying what they said to you online?
No, no, I think the fact that you're behind a screen gives you the perception of safety. And I think that is a reality as well. I can say whatever I want to you right now and you can't do anything back but use your words. Um, and sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me, or it's not a true statement. When you tell somebody something, it really does stick with them for a long time. And when you're a kid, a young kid especially, you need validation more than anything because your whole life is changing. And so for people to say those things online, it's almost like they were saying it in person. But I certainly don't believe that some of those things that people said would be said face to face.
Okay. Looking back, how did evolving awareness of sexuality influence your decision, particularly around sharing intimate messages or images?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. I fortunately never exchanged any intimate pictures or images, but I did have a really difficult time developing my own sense of sexuality as a young person. I'm still a young person, but I mean a very young person, 12, 13 years old at the time surrounding my story. I really, really liked this girl at school, and I would hear conversations from other guys talking about things that, they were doing with the girls that they liked or they enjoyed doing or thought about doing. And that just didn't really feel like me. I felt like I wasn't attracted to women. And it was frustrating for me because I also wasn't attracted to men either. And so I was always taught that it was one or the other, maybe both, but never neither. And I was really irritated because I liked this girl, but I didn't want her like that. And so it was confusing for me. I think the online space really gave me that illusion of safety when it came to talking to older people about the things that I was experiencing, the frustrations that I was experiencing of not feeling like I could be somebody for her or somebody for somebody. The anonymity of that space made it really easy for those conversations to happen. And yeah, I think sexuality for me really developed for worse in the online gaming community. I'd be
Wow.
happy to answer any other questions about that too.
Um, you've touched on something. This is very, very powerful, and I just lost my words here a bit, but I'm recovering. Um, what made you pause and make you think, I'm not going down that path? I'm not going to share any sensitive images or any sexual content. Why did you how to word this? Why you didn't do it?
I think honestly, I was one of the lucky ones because, if I was attracted to someone, um, or I had been manipulated into doing it, there's a possibility that it could have happened. But fortunately, I think I kind of grew up a little bit faster than other kids and I had a little bit more self-awareness. But I also just didn't have that sexual drive yet. So I don't think that I had that piece inside of me to be manipulated. It was like I was all logic and no heart. But I think and I'm probably the other way now, and my wife will tell you that much. But I think for a lot of kids and a lot of young people experiencing sexuality, that's a really easy choice to make, especially when you care about somebody else. I I was walking through the gaming community and I met this person who was a friend and mentor. He was a few years older than me. I was 12 and he was 19 and he experienced some of these questions himself. And for me, it felt like speaking to somebody who had experience that felt like mentorship, that felt like guidance. And we got to walk through a lot of those questions together, like I said, for better or for worse.
How did it make you feel, all of these things?
I grew up in an American culture where guys don't really talk about sexuality. We don't really talk about romance, especially. I've always been a very romantic person. Like I I just didn't feel really like masculine. That just didn't feel like me. And I think a lot of people would have said that too. We didn't grow up talking about those kinds of things, and we definitely weren't validated for having questions about those things. So when I went into an anonymous group or with an anonymous person, I'm anonymous, they're anonymous. I'm speaking into the void. I'm speaking all of my feelings in a place where someone else couldn't hurt me, couldn't say bad things about me, couldn't judge me, couldn't alienate me or isolate me. That it was the perfect, it was almost prayer in a way, you know? It felt so safe, even though in a lot of ways it wasn't.
So you had the perfect environment to open up, and that's interesting. Um, did did all of this anonymity gave you power? It empowered you in some way.
Yeah, I think so. I have a therapist now, and we meet online just like this, every month or so. And, he knows my name and he knows kind of the state that I live in. But beyond that, he doesn't know much else about me. And I think that makes it the perfect kind of person to know so many details about me, but so few identifying factors. It's like all of the emotional, like relational intimacy without any of the risk, if that makes sense.
It does, and this is so powerful that you're actually saying the words out loud. um, I tried to shine a light on this as well, but obviously I've never been to what you've been, and I think your voice is more powerful than my one at this point. Except from what I understood, many parents, they don't understand the power of anonymity online and what that safe environment does to a child. I'm not trying to accuse anyone or pinpoint to any specific parent, because obviously they do struggle with their life as well. And with the fact that technology is way up to what it was probably 20 years ago. But coming back to the parents, at what point during that experience would you have liked your parents to be aware of what was happening online with you?
I think it goes back to culture. I've said the words space, culture, and community probably more than I should, and I also have said anonymity, but I can't even say that word.
Don't worry, I
I
struggle with that too.
right? It's a hard word. We need a new word for that. I I think that question goes all the way back to culture. Because
Okay.
if we had fostered a culture beyond my parents, just in my community or my country even, where these conversations were normalized and young people were validated or challenged, not just validated, but also challenged to grow, that this environment, this digital ecosystem wouldn't have been so attractive. It wouldn't have been so enticing or alluring, if that makes sense. I I think I would have liked my parents to get involved once the more concerning activities started getting involved. At this point, looking back, um, that mentor of mine, he had supported me through so much of my middle school kind of growth areas. He was there to ask me about how school was for like a year. He was a completely normal online friend and mentor. And he would ask me how school's going. He would help me with my geometry homework. He would ask me how the girl that I liked, how that was going. And that's how it was for a long time. And I was happy with that. But after that year had kind of finished up, his behavior started to switch. Instead of him supporting me, it became me supporting him. He started to experience his own mental health struggles, depression, anxiety, continued questions with sexuality, even self-harm and suicidal ideation.
Wow.
Yeah, I wish my parents would have known about starting about then.
Wow. This is so powerful. What or why do you think? Okay, you're talking from an American's perspective, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not going to bring that into Europe, but from an American perspective, why do you think you don't have that, um, let's say, that safe environment where you have, let's play a perfect picture here, yeah? You have your family sit down at the table and everybody's asking like, how was your day go, or how was your day, or what
Yeah.
happened, what did you do, who did you speak with? Why do you think this is not um, graved or built into your culture?
Well, first of all, I think not to bring the culture and politics of culture into it, but I think that the fact that my parents had to work so hard for their dollar meant that when they got home, it was usually after dinner time and they're ready to collapse and they don't have the bandwidth, the emotional bandwidth to take on more. It was like they had two full-time jobs themselves and three full-time kids. So it was really a difficult recipe to get perfect and be there emotionally for your children, but also be there emotionally and logically for your jobs, which especially more and more after COVID, have permeated the boundary of home and work and have come home. So it's only gotten worse. Your dollar gets you less far, your time is less valuable, and you work from home most of the time. So I don't think it's really gotten much better. Most people eat dinner by themselves. And even my wife and I just got married 2 months ago. And she grew up
Congrats.
in a small town. Yeah, thank you. She grew up in a small town culture in the sticks, and I grew up kind of towards the city. And we were really frustrated with each other at the beginning of our like first few weeks of marriage because we're like, yeah, I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, you don't want to eat dinner with me. I'm like, oh, we eat dinner every like few nights a week, but for her, like that was every single night. And it's just not common in America anymore for families to sit down and eat every single night at the dinner table and have those conversations. And so even now I'm learning to like ask my wife, what was your favorite part of your day? What was your least favorite part of your day? Who was somebody today that impacted you? How did you feel? How did you feel God move you today? Things like that. That wasn't part of our culture growing up, especially in my family, especially in my community. It just it wasn't what our culture looked like. It's a little
Understood.
tangent, but it's something I'm passionate about is
It,
is that those spaces.
that's good that you're actually open up and sharing these things. We are not trying to, how to say, to find vulnerabilities in parents or pinpoint out their mistakes or struggles, but we are trying to bring awareness that if you come from a similar environment, you may be faced with this kind of possibility where maybe your parents they struggle with, as in your case, they struggle with two jobs, they had their own problems and all of these things, and three kids, and probably it
Yeah.
was a bit exhausting, but that was the look that somebody else needed to come into your life and do all the horrible things that he did.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I certainly don't want to blame my parents for that because I think I'm really clear that what happened wasn't necessarily my parents' fault. I think my parents worked really, really hard to give us a space as kids to grow and to thrive. Like we had all of the nice things. We grew up when I was really young. Things have definitely changed in my family, but when I was really young, like we were a well-off family. But I think we learned that money isn't everything, especially, when money got tough as I grew up. Um, but yeah, my parents did so much right. And even my parents who did so much right, we all still got the recipe wrong because nobody knows how to raise kids in the digital age. It feels impossible. And even I'm scared for my future kids because I feel like, I work in digital policy and I work with younger kids and I still don't know what platforms they're using and they're catching up so much faster than I can study
Yeah.
it because they're on the front lines. It just feels like no matter what, we're just always going to be behind them.
Yes. You remind me of a conversation I had with my mother. Um, it was quite a while back. I was frustrated on something, and I said to her like, "Oh, you don't know how to do things. You don't know." And she looked at me in a very calm manner, and she said, "Listen, dear, do you think that you came with um, instruction manual? No, you didn't. I had to figure it out how to raise you, how to feed you when you were sick, when you were depressed, when I had to figure it out. No one tells you how to be a parent. So yeah, that's why we don't we are not here to blame them, shame them, or anything else. We are here to help them understand and
Mhm.
probably pay attention to the things that they don't think to pay attention to.
Exactly.
I have another question for you in this
Yeah,
regard.
please.
What signs or conversation do you wish adults could have picked up on earlier?
I think that for myself and for most people that were or are in my situation, the social withdrawal is real. And I'll kind of paint a picture of where I was at in my journey of being really groomed online. Um, my abuser, I think is a pretty appropriate word, was trying to bait my sense of empathy, and he was trying to disguise his sexualized grooming behavior as mental illness. So I was spending a lot of time trying to support him emotionally as he was kind of falling apart. He was sending me pictures and videos of self-harm, of
Wow.
suicide content, and eventually he would continue to bring up those conversations about sexuality that we've had together, particularly about my feelings of a lack of sexuality, and decided that to recommend a prescription for me to absorb a lot of pornography. He would send me videos and links of pornography. And to make a really long story short, he would send me porn, he would send me sexualized images or videos from the internet, and those pictures and videos of self-harm content to kind of lure me in and support him, draw me away from my family, draw me away from my friends. And so one thing that I wish that parents would see is that in the digital age, social withdrawal is possible. It's possibly something a lot deeper than just teenage angst. It's probably a lot more than just social anxiety. I'm a personal believer that social anxiety, that depression, these are symptoms of a greater issue. And to create a nurturing space for parents and teenagers to have those kinds of conversations, the conversations have to feel natural and they have to come up often. Difficult subjects like pornography, sexuality, sex, difficult topics. Like I wish my parents would have done that with me sooner, um, especially with pornography and self-harm. I wish I was equipped to know what those things were before I discovered them through someone else. Just because the conversations didn't happen didn't necessarily mean that I was safe from them.
Wow. Do you think, in your opinion, this is we are not bringing your parents in here, but in your own opinion, do you think that that kind of conversation they didn't happen because of your age? They believe that you're too young to actually know these things?
Yeah, I think that was true for my parents. I think that was true for all parents in my community. Um, Pretty much everyone I knew was talking about porn at 13 years old. I think most of our parents didn't think that we would find that stuff until we were, just about ready to leave for college. But as we know with statistics now, the average age of exposure, at least here in the US, and I would assume for the rest of the West as well, is just about 8 or 9 years old. That's the age of first exposure to porn. So,
Wow.
yeah, I certainly don't blame my parents, but we just had so much access. And for me in particular, the access found its way to me. So,
If I say this is fascinating, this is the wrong way to say it, but it is fascinating because you're raising awareness about it. It's not fascinating at all because this is it's an actual struggle of so many parents these days.
yeah, absolutely.
Are there are there are there any warning sign that could help parents stop grooming early on?
Yeah, kind of like I mentioned before, probably with too much length, social withdrawal is a really big one. If you see your children abruptly change behavior or grades slip or kind of emotional social withdrawal from school, losing friends all of a sudden, I think kind of their time is like a bottle. And the further and further drained it is, it's going somewhere. Energy is going somewhere. And when there's holes in the bottom and it's draining out, like you have to look for where are these going? It's a bad analogy, but it's real. And that was true for me. I was tired all the time. My grades started slipping. My emotional well-being was really drained. In a lot of ways, I started saying things I think that were alarming, um, and kind of ahead of my time. I think that's kind of how my parents started to realize that something was wrong.
Okay. You mentioned that you've been groomed online. Can you tell me if you've done something that you regret today, and what were the behavioral tactics that the person used on you, if you can talk about it?
Yeah. I wish that I would not have fallen for the lie that if I watched pornography, the internet pornography that he sent me, that I could be somebody for her. Because I watched that pornography for I'm so long. I watched it for years, even after he was gone. And
Wow.
it stuck with me like an addiction. And I think addiction is the right word. It took something for me for years to kick and influenced the real relationships that I had with women in my teenage years and before I went to college. I developed my sense of sexuality around pornography and not around real women, not around real love, and not around real emotional intimacy. Because for me, the pornography that I was watching was, you know, male dominant. It was rude. It was abrasive. It was aggressive. And I didn't realize that that wasn't love. And so when I looked at myself and wondered what was wrong with me, why wasn't I feeling these things? It's because those things weren't real. Because those things were that was acting. It was
Yeah.
aggression. It was capitalism in the form of sexuality sold to young eyes. And it was a lie. I wish that I wouldn't have bought into the lie that I could view it and change and be somebody for somebody because I was already somebody.
Wow. How, how did this make you feel in regards to discrepancy between your action in those moments and your self-perception?
My self-perception then or now.
Both, if you can do a comparison.
Yeah. I I think that I was skeptical at first, but when you speak to a young person with a certain amount of authority, with clarity and confidence that you know that you've been there and that you got out of it because of this, you know, X plus Y equals Z, um, that you believe that. You're skeptical for sure, but you think, why don't I just try it? So that was me then. I think me now is just what I said. My perception is that he used that content to lure me in, to keep me trapped, to keep me stuck, to keep me reliant, and ultimately tried to continue those sexual conversations that led God knows where he wanted them to go.
Did you ever, at any point in that whole ordeal, wanted to withdraw or get distance? Did you try to break the connection? And if you did, what happened?
I started to disrupt the connection when I eventually asked that girl out. Um, Her and I started going out, um, and we spent time together. I started making new friends, and we started spending time together. And he started to try to pull me in anytime I was spending with those people in my life. It worked for a while, and I was genuinely worried that he would take his life. And he started saying he needed extra support and he wanted me to be there for him more. And he was worried that something might happen to him. So I tried really hard to connect him with real people in real life. But you're a 12, 13-year-old person and you don't really have any connections to help him. And so you just decide to shoulder that weight. I got really frustrated with him after about like 3 or 4 months of that behavior because I was tired. I wanted to pursue my own relationships, and I felt like our friendship had become one-sided. I was supporting him a lot, and his grooming behavior, it was more and more clear that it was just that, and that disguise of mental illness started to rupture and to break. So, there was a couple weeks back to back to back to back nights where he would call me and say that something was wrong, and I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, I was anxious, I was worried about him because, for as much as I realized that he was abusing me, he was grooming me, there was also a really genuine friendship and mentorship that we had for a full year, where he was the only person who actually cared about me. And so I tried to advocate for him and tried to be that person to shoulder that weight. But eventually I just couldn't take it anymore. And it kind of all fell apart in one night.
And that's the night when your parents find out about everything.
Yeah, that's right.
I have a heavy question for you, so feel free to
Please.
not answer if you're not comfortable with it. But from an emotional perspective, what was the impact for you, and what are the scars left behind?
Um, it's a heavy one, but it's a good one. I The pornography addiction stuck around for a long time, a really long time. I went to college, and all through high school, I battled it with an accountability group. I got involved with a church community that really supported me. And when I went to college, I ended up getting rid of my smartphone to kick porn out of the door. That's one thing. My body image was another thing. Pornography and social media, especially algorithms, made me question myself and the way that I looked. That took many, many, many years to kind of to work through and to, like I said, that perception of wanting to be somebody for someone and realizing that I already am somebody, and anxiety, the anxiety that stuck around for so long afterward.
Okay. What would you advise children who are confronting similar pressure or situation online?
I'll flip the question for you. Here's what I recommend to parents to make sure that spaces are adequate. I think
Okay.
having those conversations early and often about difficult topics like pornography, sexuality, sex, um, topics that maybe parents of the previous generation might have thought were too explicit to have with younger children. Creating a clear expectation that you are a safe person to come to with difficult experiences, with difficult questions, and making those kinds of conversations more comfortable than seeking help online anonymously, breaking the allure of anonymous spaces. I think that's one of the key roles of the parent of a digital native, of the younger children in this generation. But for the kids, I think realizing that your parents are people, they are just like you, and that more often than not, sure, the topics might be uncomfortable, but your parents probably went through them some way or another, whether they were online or they were in person, and maybe just have more experience than you because their experience was different. Um, I don't think I realized that my parents were people until like I went to college. I didn't realize that my parents went through hardship and had struggles and had so much valuable advice because I thought that the internet, that Google had so much clear, concrete authority that it didn't feel like my parents were experts. But in fact, my parents were experts on their own experience and certainly had more than enough to help me get through those early teenage years.
This is so beautiful. You word this so incredibly beautiful for not only the children but for the parents as well. It gives them recognition in their struggle. Thank you.
Yeah.
For a child who, let's say, today has a very friendly conversation with somebody they never met, what are the warning signs that they should watch out for beyond the obvious, like emotional manipulation or the peer pressure online? Are there any other warning signs?
It's hard because behind the avatar and the user is another person just as complex as me or you. Because the internet doesn't just create victims, but it also forges predators as well. And oftentimes it forges predators out of victims. This cyclical harm is very common. Um, I think I think it's almost impossible to see those warning signs immediately. And I think that's what makes the internet such a dangerous place, but also such an incredible place because you can share those emotional experiences with other people, but oftentimes, and likely more often than we would hope, those those online anonymous spaces are used for harm because it's so hard to tell. I don't want to fear monger. And one of the biggest things that I want to do as a survivor advocate is not leave parents with a sense of like doom and gloom, like my whole world's falling apart. What do I do? Um, you can find friends online. Your kids may have healthy friendships online. I had so many healthy friendships online for years, and I know people that even met up in person with, really amazing, kind, awesome people. I will say just having conversations with your children about the people they're talking to online in a way that's not judgmental, in a way that's you're excited about their new friends, you're asking helpful, not accusatory questions. Oh, you said, etc. was such and such years old. You're like, well, what does it mean for you to have a friend that's older? Where is that helping you? Or where is that difficult? What state are they from? What kinds of things do they like to do? Rather than how old are they? No way, not happening. Because for me in my situation, my parents were clear that talking to strangers online was not okay. But I also thought it was not okay to not have friends. So I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I chose what I thought was best for me. But that's just the story of humanity. So,
That's so true. That's
yeah.
so true. What's one thing that you would advise educators, parents, in how they should support a young person in resilience mode?
Help me understand exactly what you mean by resilience mode.
Um, so you have a child that's withdrawn, spends time in computer. You have no idea what he or she does, but they don't want to open. How do that parent approaches the child, and how the educator can get to that child without actually how you say preying on them or make
Hmm.
them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's a great question, and I appreciate the clarification because it gives me a kind of a new approach. You can't break your way in. Children are really fragile, and their reactions sometimes don't make sense. I think we can all think back to a time when we were younger and we made a decision that somehow just doesn't correlate. Like, how did we get from A to B to C? That doesn't make sense. Children are really fragile and they have a really large capacity to grow resilience quickly. Um, you have to open up yourself in vulnerability first as a parent or an educator, saying that I totally understand. this was my experience, or even saying before you know about their experience, setting the precedent that those kinds of conversations are okay, that you are you are a nurturing place for them to seek refuge. You're a stronghold for them. Because you can't break your way in. You can't mine your way in. You can't crack your way in. You have to let them unfold in front of you. And that's their decision. And it's just I think it's your responsibility as an educator. My wife's an educator. I'm a youth educator as well. I'm going into therapy and counseling. Your main job is just to set the tone and to observe the unfolding that's happening before you, because every person unfolds into the man or woman that they become. And what a beautiful opportunity as a parent or educator to watch that happen.
That's so nice. How did you reconstruct the trust in yourself and in tech after what happened?
I'm not sure that I ever really reconstructed the trust with tech. That's been a journey for sure. And we're meeting over Zoom and also over the Atlantic Ocean, which is pretty cool. So technology is a huge part of my life. My job wouldn't be possible without tech, and much of my life wouldn't be possible without it. But with myself, I realized that corporations don't always have my best interest in mind.
Okay.
That think about your washing machine or your oven. These devices were used to free you up time.
Yes.
How much time do you think you save a week just with your washing machine alone?
I would say at least 24 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours. I think the smartphone was aimed at very much the same goal. All of the downtime between work and and play and communication all refined into this one beautiful object that fits in your pocket to make life feel seamless. But we spent all of that time back on the very device that freed it. You wouldn't spend those 24 hours you saved from, your washing machine. You wouldn't spend it with your washing machine. Like that's weird. That's really strange. So
Yes.
I think let's get back to the place where we realize that our smartphones are tools to help us navigate the world, save time, and spend it on the things we love. And so I gave a speech recently where I opened the speech and said, what are the three most important things in your life? And so people answered. They said family, friends. People said their hobbies, gardening, music, poetry, painting. And then I asked them to write a list of the things that they spend the most time on. People said work, entertainment, work,
Yes.
entertainment, travel,
Phone.
and exactly. There's, at least here in the US, people spent less than 8% of their free time that they didn't spend sleeping with the things that they said matter most. 8%. So
Wow.
if we see that duality of, like you said, duality behavior in the front in the beginning of the podcast, like that's the biggest duality of behavior across not just our culture, not just like in here in America or in Europe. Like this is a worldwide problem.
Yes.
So I think that's been really hard for me seeing that in myself. The most important thing to me is my wife and my faith and my family. And for years before I got rid of my smartphone, about 3 years ago, I was constantly on my phone. I was falling into pornography, or I was falling into algorithms that to the point where I wasn't even sure that my thoughts were my own because I was just constantly absorbing.
Wow.
So creating that new trust in myself, I think just started with creating distance from tech, because when you're able to put down the phone, especially for my generation who pretty much woke up in the world with phones, being able to put it away and existing in a moment of silence, that peace that you find, you wonder if people have experienced this since the beginning of time. and that you missed out on it because some corporation said you couldn't have it. And so that's really where I've been these past few years.
Wow. Um, can you describe what digital intentionalism means for you and how it shifts power back to the user?
Like I said, corporations have done everything that they can to grab at your attention, to make you and your attention a commodity to buy and sell. A lot of our thoughts are not our own anymore, and we are wasting the time that's so precious to us on things that genuinely do not matter. Our short, beautiful, incredible lives with so much potential on 15-second videos for 4 hours a day. So digital
Yeah.
intentionalism is just what it sounds like. It's living in a world, a digital world, intentionally. It's as simple as putting your phone in black and white, taking an active step in the right direction, because growth and change are a direction. They're not necessarily an action. Black and white phone, putting your phone in your in a drawer before you go to bed, or setting it in the kitchen instead of your bedroom, buying a real alarm clock. I listen to the radio now. Like I'm about to cancel my Spotify subscription. I realizing that we had so many of the tools to navigate the world that we exist in before smartphones ever took over our lives. Like I've lived with this light phone for 3 years now, and it's as big as a credit card, and it's gotten me through this world perfectly fine. I think people have so much fear of feeling stuck or feeling left behind. If if being left behind means you're sad, you're anxious, you're always connectable online, like you feel stuck, that's not left behind. I I just want to see a world where technology is built for humanity and oh, there's a train. I want to see a world where technology is built for humanity and not the other way around is really my hope for digital intentionalism.
That's
I
so
love the
nice.
train. I get really passionate about this topic, so I could talk about this for hours.
Hopefully, one day we can do another podcast where we specifically talk about this. If, but we will get to
Of
that.
course. Yeah, we can.
Um, Staying in the topic, what do you think are the best practice to help with recovery
Recovery from,
from any kind of digital trauma?
well, digital trauma, I think, is something that's experienced by pretty much anyone who has a smartphone. I think
Okay.
we've all been so desensitized to the things that we see. We see on the news that another school gets shot up, or we see pictures and videos of, you know, bloodied Ukrainians or starving Gazans, and this is normal for us because now with our feeds and the algorithm, this is stuff we see every day. This isn't okay, and this isn't normal. It's not normal to see these things every single day. So I think beyond just people who've experienced the kinds of trauma we think about when we hear the word trauma, it's much deeper than that. And I think it's much broader than people think too. It's the everyday user who who questions their body because of the pictures they see online of supermodels that are AI filtered and, you know, totally altered, paid movie stars who look perfect, who have perfect lives. Like, I think that in itself is a trauma because it changes the way that you think about yourself and about the people around you forever. My piece of advice for anyone experiencing anything from porn addiction to childhood online sexual trauma to just everyday users who are desensitized from all the crap they see across the world, who are losing hope, is to just step away, go for a walk. The world that we have is in a better shape than we think. And there is hope that it will get better. I think it starts with putting the devices down, even just for 5 minutes, thinking about some of the best things in your life and going to pursue those things because our world can only heal when we try. And corporations have us stuck in the same cycles and the same cycle of hopelessness that things won't get better and that we're most profitable when we don't have hope.
This is so powerful. Since we're speaking about hope, what gives you hope to wake up every single day?
That's a really hard question. I've lived the past 2 years with a chronic illness that's really made my life difficult.
Wow.
And every day is a struggle for me. It's hard living with a chronic illness that is invisible to people, where like every day is painful and there's no clear treatment. It's just kind of one of those things you might have to live with. And so I've realized that life is beautiful. Life before I got sick, and even now that I am sick, rather than like being sick as an identity, but just being sick as a status, life is incredible and should be pursued. I'm stuck here, s staying home most days. I work from home. I'm a university student. I spend a lot of time online, unfortunately, working, studying, writing, reading. What gives me hope is seeing a world that is healing, just going on my 10-minute morning walk to help ease my morning pain before the sun comes up so I can take my medication, and hearing the birds start to sing and seeing my refugee neighbors walk the dog, knowing that their life's just a little bit better today, just like mine is. I know that our world is going to heal and it's just going to take time. Being an active participant in that I think that gives me hope.
That's impressive. Seriously, it is. You just presented the world in a very different angle than we are used to see it every single day. This is amazing. What in your own vision, what or how young people can guard their digital life instead of falling victims?
It's important to acknowledge that falling victim doesn't just necessarily mean getting groomed online. Social media platforms, the way that they make money, social media platforms are inherently predatory. They gather your information, they steal your data, they sell it. When you delete a picture of yourself, they give you makeup advertisements and offer you filters. The more lonely and isolated, depressed, or anxious that you feel, the more that they can sell to you and the more they can lie to you. That the most money that they can make is when you're at your lowest. Because when you're at your best, you're out and about with your friends and family and you're enjoying the life that, whether you believe you were created by the random chances of the universe or created by the intentional hand of a creator, that your life is still so meaningful. And a corporation wants to sell you lies and you'll buy them. I want to empower young people not to buy into the lie that they're not enough, that they are somebody. They are somebody. For me, it meant getting rid of social media and, putting my smartphone in a drawer for a few years and getting a dumb phone. But it also was an intentional decision to get out of the algorithms. I don't need Instagram to set my tone for the day. Me and God can do that ourselves. And I don't need to wake up to the morning news every day. I get to wake up with the people that I care about. It goes back to the hope question. I think algorithms sell us things that make us worry, that make us anxious, and that isolate us. And I think it's time to see social media as a predator and an abuser and to see social media for what it really is, for the systems that make it the way it is, and maybe just to say goodbye, even for a little while.
During the podcast, you mentioned quite a few times that you put your phone away. A while back, I read that there is a science. There, let me word this in English. There is a scientific proof that you experience withdrawal from your phone, exactly you would withdraw from any other addiction. Did you ever experience that? Did you experience that withdrawal?
Yes, absolutely. I experienced that withdrawal. There was for the first few weeks, I felt like buzzing in my pocket, even though my phone was on silent, my light phone was on silent. I felt buzzing all the time, and it like wasn't real. I would reach in my pocket even when I didn't to pull out my phone to scroll through it just to stare at like text messages, and I I felt anxious the first few days, just existing in spaces with people where I wasn't looking down, where I was kind of looking around and I would make eye contact with people and it was like awkward or weird. Especially people my age who don't know how to like make eye contact with strangers anymore, which is
Yeah.
really weird. Um, and I think that even beyond that anxiety and desire to like fall into the bubble, if that makes sense. Other people's perception of me was different too, because this was before getting rid of your smartphone was cool. This is when it like wasn't on YouTube. Getting rid of my smartphone 30 days, like I did that way before influencers did it, and and it was weird. And people judged me, and people made fun of me. People said that they were scared of my phone. They thought it was like some sort of like burner phone or that I was dealing drugs. And it was
Oh
like,
my God.
you know, I even had one girl say like, "Oh my God, is that your phone?" And I was like, "Yeah, it is. This is my phone. This is, I don't spend 5 hours on it like I used to." Um, it was really hard at first getting rid of it. I felt different, but different bad eventually turned into different good.
What gave you strength to go on despite people making fun of you and being an outsider again, but in a different way, let's say?
I was really curious about how the process would affect me. And so I started journaling it, and I've gathered this journal online. I think it's on my website, The Moments Between Moments. Um, but I realized that all of those aptly named moments between moments that we spend filling our time with digital media, scrolling, music, podcasts, online books, news, the whole digital ecosystem were moments of prayer, of personal introspection. I would write little songs in my head walking to class or, walking to the grocery store. I would think of little poems. Um, I even started writing little things to my wife, and
That's
I
nice.
realized it is. And I realized that there's a lot more than just absorbing. And I think humans are inherently artistic, made to create things. And so when we absorb so much content and we consume more than we create, I think we're out of alignment with our purpose or maybe our design, or maybe if you just want to call it potential. It just it was numbing. And I didn't like the feeling. I went back to a smartphone after like 2 years for work, because it wasn't sustainable for me. Of course I went back. It's back to the dumb phone. But I hated the way I felt. All of the opportunities I had to waste time again. I fell back into the same places of scrolling, of consuming, of numbing myself to death. I think that gave me strength. It's realizing there is more to life than what these corporations have offered us.
Okay. I have two last questions and I let you go, I promise.
Please,
Um,
yeah.
do you have any social media account at this moment, apart from LinkedIn?
Yeah, you found me on LinkedIn, so you know it. Um,
Yes.
I do have an Instagram account and a Facebook account. The beauty of those accounts are they don't have any posts on them, and you can search my name, um, and my account bio takes you to a link where you can get my phone number directly, and we can connect in a meaningful way. You can also
That's
find
amazing.
my Calendly, so we can find a time to get coffee, virtual coffee or whatever, and just my email. So I I don't want to contribute to the digital problem any more than I have to.
Okay. This is the last question. What's the one actionable step every listener, youth, parent, educator can take today to reclaim their safe in digital spaces?
Change is a direction.
Okay.
Any small step that you can take to make an impact is meaningful. Whether that's putting your phone, like I said, in the kitchen before you go to bed, or having a small conversation with your spouse when they get home. Whether that's having intentional conversations with your kids once a week at the dinner table, or deleting social media entirely. And maybe you just are sick of it altogether and you want to get a dumb phone. I think change is a direction and it starts small and just keep pushing through because it's going somewhere. Trust the process. Healing is possible. It's one step at a time.
Thank you so much, Harrison, for sharing your story so openly. Your story shows that healing is possible and that thoughtful action can transform trauma into resilience.
To all our listeners, we hope this episode gave you ideas and tools to protect the children in your life. For more tips and resources, check the show notes. Do not forget to subscribe and join us for more conversation that keep children safe online. Stay safe and stay informed.